Good morning. I am Steve Weber. Welcome to the American Gumption Morning Show. Today is July 1st. We're halfway through the year. So, 6 months down and the first day of the seventh month. So exactly halfway through the year. I don't know from a daily point of view if it's exactly halfway through the year, but certainly from the month point of view, it's exactly at the midpoint. So excited to get the second half of the year going here. And today is show number 196, sneaking up on 200. My goal was to get to 200 by the end of June. So I'm just a few shows behind schedule, but that's okay. I kind of purposely took the last month and reduced my schedule a little bit as I've been doing some behind the scene things as, we kind of getting ready to relaunch the show in a slightly, kind of a new format since it'll be a year that I'm doing the show. So we're going to just make some subtle adjustments as time goes on. All righty. So today we have Tara Crete joining us. Tara Crete is going to come join us in about 12 minutes or so from now. And she is a yoga instructor, a yoga teacher for a dozen years now. And she's a life coach. And so anyway, I'm excited to talk with her. And that'll be coming up, as I said, about 15 past the hour. Now, my monologue today is moments of truth. Moments of truth. And this is very much inspired by what Tara and I are going to talk about today. So that'll come up in just a second or two. So let me tell you what's happening this week and then next week. So plan to do a show tomorrow. Do not have a guest scheduled, but we'll figure out what we're going to do. Maybe I'll just do a monologue. I've been doing a few more of those lately. So things are kind of, as I said, evolving. So we'll be here tomorrow doing something. Now, Sunday, I'm a guest on Della Fatui's show, and it's called Della's Voice Sunday Live Talk Show, and that's at 12 noon. And I'll have it on my Facebook. I'll put an announcement on my Facebook page, and but I'm looking forward to that. Della was a guest of mine at the end of the year, or maybe it was the very first week of this year. So about 6 months ago. So anyway, I'm excited to join her. And the topic will be living your life with gumption. Imagine that. I'm going to talk about living your life with gumption. So that's on Sunday. And that's on July 4th. And it's a good time. American Gumption on Della's Voice on July 4th. Living your life with gumption. All righty. Now, Monday's kind of the official holiday, so planning to probably not do a show that day, but that could change. Tuesday, Serenity Sam comes back, and she has been painting since the last time. I mean, she just picked up a brush and started doing oils, and she's going to tell us how that whole process went. She's good. I've been watching her on Facebook, so she's going to give us a little bit of a behind the scenes on how she just started drawing or painting. And so that's going to be fun. She'll return to the show Tuesday. And Wednesday, Peter Panagore, I'm not 100% sure, but he is the author of Heaven is Beautiful, and he had a near-death experience. He's actually had two, but the book is about his first one when he was climbing up doing an ice climb and got stuck up on the mountain kind of late at night and in the middle of the night, and on the rappelling down, basically was stuck on a ledge, and he checked out and then he came back. So he'll tell us that story, and that's Wednesday. All righty. So that's it. Now let's go ahead and do this monologue, Moments of Truth. This is going to be kind of an easy one, or a fun one. Not easy, it's going to be fun. We'll leave it at that. All right. So moments of truth. So there are times in your life when you face a moment of truth and you have to decide. Look, we decide hundreds of things every day, but there's like these kind of like a moment of truth is a little bit bigger than just like one of the daily decisions that we make. It's a critical moment or a defining moment or a decisive moment. So you're left feeling like it's now or never, and there's like an urgency or an immediacy that is important. Maybe not like immediate like this moment, but like immediate like in the next like you got to do something like coming up here pretty quick. You got to decide, and it could be a turning point in your life, a juncture, a fork in the road. I talk about the fork in the road quite a bit. You get to choose. What, are you going this way or are you going that way? So, or it could be a put up or shut up moment. It's just time to take some kind of action. And so these moments of truth are essentially a moment where you have to decide what you believe. And not only do you have to decide what you believe, but you have to be willing to take some kind of action to back up your beliefs. So you could decide, oh, I believe this, but then you don't take any action to do something. That's not really a moment of truth. That's sort of like, that you're really deciding, you're not deciding, or you're deciding that you're not going to do something. So in my mind, these moments of truth demand some kind of an action, and that action has to be kind of an immediate thing. So it's not like you get to think about it for a month or two. You're going to have to, something or get off the pot, as they say. All righty. So I've had two moments in my life. I've had probably many, many more than that, but I have two that I'm going to share with you today. Now, the first one I've shared many, many, many times. So I'll just kind of go through that one briefly. So the first one was, for more than a decade, 10, 12 years, people were telling me, and this started in the 80s. This started in the 80s. And so people said, hey, do you know who you look like? You look like the guy from Bosom Buddies. And so I had this, people mentioning this over and over again. And then they would always end up, not always, but most of the time they'd say, hey, have you ever thought of making any money off of it? And so when people would say, hey, do you know who you look like? Has anyone ever said you look like the actor? I would always say, yeah, and I'm going to make some money off of it. I didn't necessarily think I was going to make money off of it, but I had the conversation so many times that I was kind of bored with the conversation. And so I just beat them to the punch and them asking me, have you ever thought of making money off of the fact that you look like a famous actor? And I would just say, no, I'm going to make some money off of it. So I'm driving. So the moment of truth for me came. I'm driving around. It's 1996. I had already been Forrest Gump for Halloween in 1994. The movie came out on July 6th, coming up an anniversary next week. Movie came out July 6th, 1994. That year, Halloween, I put the costume together and I'm Forrest Gump. And so now it's like a year and a couple months later. It's like March of 1996. I'm driving around and I hear that the Bubba Gump Shrimp Company is opening up in Monterey, California. I'm living in San Jose, California. So I'm just right up the road from them, 75 miles right up the road, but I'm in the neighborhood. And so I go, oh my gosh, I have said 1,000 times that I'm going to make some money off of it. And I had that moment of truth where I said, am I going to call them and see about getting a job, or am I going to just let that moment go by? So of course I did call him. I did get the job. I showed up. In fact, when I showed up, I was in the costume and I had brought several pieces of paper and I said, option one is you can hire me for the grand opening. Option two is you can hire me for the 17 grand openings that you're going to open in the next 4 years across the country. And option number three is you can hire me to sit out on the bench in front of the restaurant on the weekends and I'll talk to people. And so they took me up on all three options and I ended up working with them for 15 years. So there you go. So that was, that's number one. Now, the one that I'm inspired to really tell today, and I've never shared this story before, is I was thinking about an earlier in life moment of truth. And now we're going all the way back to 1977. I'm a year out of high school. I'm working with my father at the time. My sister, a year younger than me, is, just finishing high school. So now it's the summer of 1977. And the little bit of a backstory is that her and I had been doing these adventurous things. And specifically, we liked outdoor activities, skiing, and we started doing some rock climbing, and we both took a class together where a guy showed us how to use equipment and ropes, and we climbed up the side of at the Delaware Water Gap on the Pennsylvania, New Jersey border. And so anyway, we did this rock climbing. So we were into this adventure stuff, outdoor kinds of things. I had bought my van at the time. I was preparing to, get it ready to take a couple-month trip across the country and travel. And so just camping and outdoor stuff was both in our hearts and minds. So she comes to me and she says, hey, I want to go parachuting. I want to go skydiving. I guess we were really more like parachuting, jump out of an airplane. And I'm like, yeah, that's great. And so like, I remember she asks me like, hey, do you want to go this weekend? I'll call up and, make a reservation. And I was like, oh, this weekend's no good. And then like a week or two go by and she says, hey, do you want to go this weekend? I was like, this weekend's no, I can't do it this weekend. And so she came to me again and she said, hey, I have another friend and him and I are going. And do you want to go or not? Well, that was now a moment of truth for me. Did I actually want to jump out of an airplane? And so I remember very specifically, like having that moment of truth. I'm like, I'm a little bit nervous about this whole airplane jumping out of thing. Do I really want to do this? And ultimately, I decided that yes, I would do it. And so she talked. Her taking action and her deciding that she was going to do it, it became that moment of truth. I either had to do it or not. I probably would not have done it on my own had she not, taken that action and said, hey, I'm already going. So anyway, that's what happened. And let me just share my screen here. This will just take a second. Here we go. There we are. Let's see. There it is. Let me change this. Let's see. It's not. I want it to be bigger than that. Oh, I know what I'm doing wrong. Hold on a second. There we go. That's what it is. There it is. Look at that. So there I am, kind of dead center in the picture, but second from the left, I guess, with the dark sunglasses on in my parachuting uniform, and my sister right next to me. She's to my left, so she's second from the right as we look at it. And the guy with the curly hair was her friend, and then the other guy was the fourth person who went. And so we went up in an airplane, and we arrived in the morning, and we took like a multiple hour instruction of like how the whole thing is going to work and how to, I remember jumping off a platform that was about 5 feet tall and learning how to, land and roll so that when you came down and hit the ground, you didn't, come down with your knees all stiff and break your legs. You hit the ground and you rolled over. So we practiced all this thing and we had the whole instruction. And then in the afternoon, after we had through these couple of hours of instructions, we went up in the airplane and we were on a static line. So we jumped out, you had to climb out onto it was like a small plane and the wheels. So you climbed out onto the wheel, you're holding onto the strut and you're on a static line and you basically just jumped off and your parachute automatically opened. And you can see on the front there was a belly patch or a belly extra parachute. And that was like, if for some reason our main parachute didn't work, we were to pull that and open that up. And we had instructions and all that. All of us, our parachutes opened up. None of us had to use the emergency chute, and we went down there and landed, and that was that. All righty, so that's the story of let's see, I'll take that off. There we go. That was that moment of truth thing and so anyway, I had this like great feeling afterwards. I was like, oh man, that was fun. Let's go do it again. Except I never went and did it again. And I don't think my sister ever went and did it again either. But in both cases of my moment of truth that I talked about, where was I going to call Bubba Gump and ask for a job and be Forrest Gump? I am mighty glad I did that. And then I'm also glad that I did the parachuting thing, because this is the first time I'm telling this story in a long, long time. And so, but it was like one of those, like it was a couple of years where it's like, oh yeah, I parachuted. It was fun. And so anyway, that was pretty cool. In both cases, I'm pretty sure I would have regretted and asked like the what if only I had if only I had done that, both those moments were times when if I had not done it, I would have probably looked back on it and went, man, I should have done it when I had the chance because I didn't do it. So anyway, acting powerfully when you have a moment of truth moment is a great way to live intentionally. It's a great way to live without regret, and it's part of living your life with gumption. So it did take gumption to actually go jump out of the airplane, and it took a lot of gumption it took more gumption for my sister to actually say, "Are you going or not? Are you going or not?" And I said, "Yes, I was." So anyway, I'm glad. Gene, thank you for encouraging me to jump out of the airplane that day. All righty, so that's it. Let's welcome Tara to the show. She is backstage. I think she's here. Hello, Tara Crete, welcome.
Thank you. Thank you so much for inviting me on your show.
Yeah, it's great to meet you in person. We kind of got to know each other, a week or two ago, and we've been having this conversation. And so, anyway, I'm glad to welcome you. And you are someone who likes to live intentionally and to make decisions in your life that allow you to take what I'm going to call the path less traveled. And I can say that because I have taken the path less traveled. The whole people tell us what we're supposed to do. And, when we're young, we are good children and we do that and we become adults and we are still good people and that we're like doing what society tells us to do. And then one day we kind of wake up and we go, hey, this isn't any fun. I want to go do what I want to go do. So now, before we go too much further with your story, and since this is the first time you're here, we have two rules on the show, so I need to explain them. The first rule is I get to read a bio that tells people a little bit more about you. You're cool with that, right?
I'm okay with that rule.
Okay, good. And the second one is I get to play the first-time guest theme song because everybody's a first-time guest. Now, if you come back a second time, we're not going to play this song. So you better enjoy it. How's that sound?
It sounds good. I'm going to have to buy you a case of beer, though. In skydiving, everything you do for the first time, you owe someone a case of beer. So I love your case of beer.
All righty. Very good. All right. So let's put you in the big screen. I'm going to adjust things up there. There we go. Now we're putting you over there. So I'm going to read this bio and then we're going to play the song. So who is Tara Crete? Tara is a life coach, certified yoga teacher, and speaker. She is devoted to living a holistic life that balances personal growth, spiritual wisdom, and social action in a fun-loving and positive manner. That is a gumption. We like fun-loving. We like spiritual wisdom. We like personal growth. You're my kind of person. So welcome.
Thanks.
Tara has been a practicing yogi for more than 18 years and a yoga instructor for a dozen years, specializing in power or dynamic flow yoga. I don't know what those are, so you're going to explain that to us as we get into this. Tara helps people expand their creativity, discover their hidden passions, and achieve their heartfelt dreams. Boy, oh boy, people dance around their dreams, but they don't powerfully go after them. So her mission is to inspire people to create a life that they truly desire. So Tara Crete, welcome to the American Gumption Morning Show.
Thanks again, Steve. So good.
All righty, let's play that song and then it's all about you. Have you ever had a marching band?
No, I wanted to sit here and march in place. That was great. I never have. Again, first time.
Very good. Well, good. Well, welcome. Hey, so you know, you're kind of minding your own business back in the mid '90s, kind of the same time I became Forrest Gump, and you go to school, you go to college, you got the job, you got the car, the apartment, the place that you're doing everything, and then all of a sudden one day you go, wait a minute, this isn't as much fun as I thought it was. It isn't as much fun as everybody said it was going to be. Like, what happened at that moment in your life?
Well, I love the story that you told earlier about Forrest Gump and your gumption to change the course of your life. And I had one of those moments, and it was right around that time in the mid '90s. I believe I was 25 years old. And as you said, I was doing everything that I thought women in the '80s and '90s were supposed to do. I had achieved not any degree at school. I didn't go to formal school. I've always been very autodidactic. So I think I have a PhD in something, but I don't have any degrees on my wall to prove it. But no, I had a really nice apartment overlooking the city. I had a boat, I had a car, I had a boyfriend. Everything was great. I wasn't unhappy by any means, but there was something pulling at me. And interestingly, this was my moment of truth moment. It was late at night, almost midnight, and I was in that alpha state where you're just kind of falling asleep, but a little bit awake. And I had a thought that I don't even think it was a thought. I think it was a truth dropped into my consciousness that at that moment I wasn't paying attention. So it came in and it was almost like, oh, she's not listening. Let's drop it in right now. And it was this dichotomy of belief systems that I had been following my whole life. I grew up going to a wonderful Protestant church in my town, and it was a big part of my life. And I believed in the story in the Bible. And then I had gone to school and was taught theory of evolution. And I believed that. But it wasn't until this very night in 1994 that I shot up in my bed and I said, I can't believe in both of those. Those two dissect one another. Well, which one do I believe? And that sent me off into, I call it the year of my great awakening. Because the years prior to that very moment, I kind of feel like I was just living on automatic. Like I said, doing what I thought I was supposed to be doing versus following my soul purpose, following my heart. So that literally changed my life. It's kind of like that movie Sliding Doors with Gwyneth Paltrow. If she had missed that metro that day, what would her life have been like? So I often think about that in my life.
So what did you do at that moment in time? You know, you're living this one life, but you realize that, gee, there's something more. I mean, so what action and how quickly did it, follow in terms of, like changing the course of your life?
It was immediate. I think it was 1:45, and I actually called one of my dear friends and I woke her up. I think of it now, and I don't think I would ever call anyone this late unless it was an emergency, but it felt like an emergency. It felt like my life emergency. I couldn't believe that I was operating on two belief systems and never really reconciled them. And she had a religious background. So I started taking steps to find out what I really believed. And that's when I literally stepped onto my spiritual path. I started talking to pastors and people and clergy. And then I went from there, wasn't getting the answers that I wanted, and started reading books. That's when I discovered a whole library of books that I devoured. It was just my time to start awakening in my life and to start living the life that my soul had a purpose for. It's interesting. We don't really know. We come into this world, but we don't really know. We're not privy to what our soul's purpose is all the time. Some people are. And for those of you that are, congratulations. I think you're living your purpose right now. I think it's that feeling that we get, that pull in your heart, that urge that makes you take that gutsy move, that gumption. And yeah, I launched into a very, very deep, powerful spiritual path that has completely changed my life.
It's funny. You called it your year of, did you say your year of awakening or your day of awakening?
My great awakening. Yes.
Yeah. So I always called 2009 my year of transformation. But what I just recently in the last year or so, I started calling it my first year of awakening, because it was like really it was like the year that kind of everything changed. And because I had, I was raised in the Catholic Church, and over the years, I kept going back, like because I knew there was something I needed to be connected and grounded with, and yet it didn't work. And so, like in my 20s, I moved to California, and there was a time when I would, lean on that, what we call, God's spiritual foundation. And then after a while, you get bored with it. And then in my 30s, I, tried it again. And then when I went the last time was when I first moved to Montana. I tried one more time. And again, the answers just weren't there. And so anyway, once we awaken, though, you can't go back. It's like the genie in the bottle. It gets out and it's like never to be put back in again.
It's so true. It's like trying to put toothpaste back in a tube. And there have been times, believe it or not, Steve, where I wanted to go back. I always consider the first 25 years of my life, I call it, I was in the dark. I really was. I didn't have a lot of spiritual awakening. I didn't have a lot of knowledge or wisdom. And there were times, though, because embarking on a spiritual path, it sounds really wonderful, doesn't it? It sounds enlightening. And, there's going to be moonlight shining on you and angels singing. Well, it's one of the hardest things I've ever done. And there were times along that path where I just wanted to turn around and go back and be that ignorant self of mine, the unaware, the uninformed, because in a way it was a little bit easier. But the reality is I wouldn't give it up for anything.
So when did yoga come into your life? Did that happen right at that time?
That was the same year. It all happened in 1 year. I started skydiving in June of '94. I started yoga that same year. And that's when I had this experience in my alpha state. So 25 years, that was just my moment.
So so I want to hear about both the skydiving and the yoga. Let's go ahead and get the skydiving out of the way because you inspired me to find that picture.
Good.
And skydiving, we talked where we messaged each other. Skydiving was a little different by the mid 90s than it was in 1977. So give people the skydiving story and what that was all about, because you did 1,600 jumps, something like
2,000
jumps. I did one.
Hey, you're part of a very small group. You should be proud. And it's people like you who jumped in the 70s and even prior that paved the way for people like me, because I never jumped around. Every once in a while, you'd see an old time skydiver jumping around canopy. And we would just look at them thinking, oh my gosh, never in a million years. The ellipticals, the real fast, zippy ram air parachutes were the ones that we jump, where you can pretty much land it. They're very precise. They have a lot of precision and alignment. So we appreciate people like you that came before us, even if it was only one skydive. It's a big deal.
Right. So, and I remember I learned the chute, the round one, it did have a little bit of a hole that allowed you to get some direction in terms of. A little
bit, sure. Yeah.
But if it had no hole, it would like the air needed to escape. So you'd end up bouncing back and forth. Well, with a little bit of a hole, you were able to kind of almost like a propeller, kind of turn it and steer it a little bit that way. Yeah. So anyway.
Yeah, thank goodness. I don't think I would have jumped if I had to jump on those canopies. Ours were much more precise, like I said. And I always trusted my canopy. My canopy, if I landed or had a bad spot and was far away from the drop zone, all I had to do was rear riser. And my canopy gave me so much lift, and I almost always ended up at the drop zone. A couple of times I landed off, but they seem a little less dangerous now. I'm not going to say it's not a dangerous sport. I would be lying. But started doing that in '94. I had a similar situation. I had someone ask me if I wanted to go, and I said no. And then a week later, I found myself talking about it, and my hands were getting sweaty. And I thought, why am I reacting in this way? And he called and said, hey, I'm jumping on Saturday. Do you want to go? And I heard myself say, yeah. And I was like, what? Skydiving? So that was in June of '94. I did a tandem. I didn't get hooked on it that one jump. It was 3 months later in September. I did my second tandem. And that was it. I was hooked. I started jumping every single weekend, and I stopped shopping. That was a clear sign that I was addicted. I wasn't buying clothes anymore. I was spending all my money jumping.
Wow. So were you still working your regular job that you had up until the point when you said, wait a minute, this can't continue. I need to kind of find more of myself.
Oh, I was. I was, because I'll remember, I'm sure my instructor, Holly, remembers. I think it was my third or fourth jump. I was still working as a motivator and a public speaker for a direct sales company. And I was getting my nails done every week. And I had long red fingernails, which cracks me up now when I think of that. And I was on the strut of I don't know if it was a Porter or it was probably a Cessna. And as I was leaving, because it was IAD, instructor assisted deployment back then. Her and her fellow instructor were watching me. And when we got on the ground, they just said, all we could see were your long red nails floating through the sky. So yeah, skydiving changed me, jumping. And it's such a funny pun, but it really did bring me down to earth. It's so funny. It changed everything. I stopped getting manicures. I had to start learning to pack my own parachute. You can't do that with long red nails. So I started to become very grounded, very earthy, and started learning so much. And that's where the yoga came into. A lot of skydivers were doing yoga. And that's a wonderful practice as well that teaches you so much about yourself and gives you so much wisdom.
As I've done my awakening over the last, and it's the thing about awakening is like you have that moment where you begin, but you just keep going and you never get,
never get there.
You never get there, but you keep progressing along the way, and it becomes easier. And like kind of the idea of the hard shell gets cracked open, and then you get down to the inner juicy stuff. And so that juicy stuff keeps going year after year. But you never actually get there. Now I've always I've not personally done any yoga, but I relate to people like when I see someone who's doing yoga, I know that they're of that mindset and kind of that awakened mindset where they're like, oh, this is they're living some kind of a spiritual life, and they're more connected with their inner thoughts and their body, and living a life intentionally. So it's funny you said that the skydiver is kind of a free-spirited thing, adventurous. They are, lots of those were in yoga. So someone introduced you to it. And what was your first experience with yoga like?
I loved it. I absolutely loved it. I was always very active. I was active in sports. At that time, I was going to the gym every day, and being introduced to yoga. When I look back now, I had no idea what I was missing. And that has completely changed my life on so many levels. I relate to it. I still go back to it. It's always very forgiving. It's welcoming if you don't practice for a week or a year, and it's life-changing. Many people, a lot of my students just come to class because they want a yoga butt and they want to be in good shape. Luckily, yoga can do that for you as well. I became very serious about yoga in 1998. I became a very serious practitioner. I went to Australia to achieve my yoga training. Back in the 90s, yoga wasn't as ubiquitous as it is today. It wasn't cool and groovy. Yoga was kind of strange and weird. And when I told people I was going to become an instructor, I would get interesting, like, oh, that's interesting. That's cool. Do people make money? Can you make money doing that? Whereas now, any ad you see on TV, any billboard, it's all people doing yoga, and it's very, very popular. So there's a reason that it's been around for 5,000 years. I'll tell you that.
So 23 years is you've been a yoga.
Yeah, I usually say like 123. That's what it feels like. But yeah, I've been practicing since 94, teaching since 98. So I should probably update those numbers.
Awesome. Well, very good. A couple of different yoga styles that were mentioned on your website, Ashtanga, and I'm not sure how to say it, Iyengar? Iyengar. Okay, Iyengar. And then you also mentioned power or dynamic flow yoga. Again, I don't know, but explain for the novice, what are the different, styles of, and then are there dozens and dozens and dozens of different styles of yoga? So maybe give kind of a yoga 101 overview, and then the particular area that you like and why you like it.
Sure. Yeah. It's a great question, because many people who practice yoga today, and there's millions and millions of people who do, they don't realize that all yoga, and there are dozens and dozens, maybe even hundreds of different types of spin-off yogas, all of them can be traced back to Ashtanga. And Ashtanga is just a Sanskrit word for 8-limbed yoga. Here in the West, we're very, very familiar with the physical limb of yoga called asana. And that's what 95% of students are doing today. They go into class, especially today, it's become very sport-like and a workout. I still treat it as a spiritual practice, and I get a workout with it. But the dynamic yoga is something that for me was very creative. I loved going to a class and teaching and not knowing on the exhale what I was going to be teaching on the inhale. It allowed my creative processes to just turn on and light up. And those were always my best classes for my students. So the vinyasa, which just means marrying your breath with your movement. So if your arms go above your head, it's an inhale. And then when you bring them down, it's an exhale. There's this beautiful symphony that takes place in a dynamic form of yoga. And dynamic just means you're working a little bit harder. Most people think, oh, you're just sitting in yoga in the lotus position meditating. And I said, oh yeah, come to one of my classes. See how you feel about that.
You mentioned, working here's some quotes, working the edge and where all the magic happens. And so I'm guessing that's like in that, a little more aggressiveness or hard workout type of yoga that you're referring to.
Yeah, it's just like right before the pot boils, right? There's that degree that you reach. If you don't approach that edge, then how do you know how to grow? And I always tell my students to come to the edge, come to the precipice. It's just like stepping onto a cliff and looking down. Don't go too far. If you go too far in yoga, you'll get injured. Your ego can kind of take you in places that you don't need to go. You should always just hang your ego up at the door. There's no place for it in yoga. Like you were saying earlier, Steve, there is no there. I would put people in a pose and tell them no one gets a star or a prize if you touch your toes or if you can't get your heels down in one of the poses. Doesn't matter. No one gets a gold star when they walk out. It's just a personal practice that does bring your senses inward, and it lights up a part of your brain as well. There's a lot of science behind yoga that's really fascinating.
I like you said it's a spiritual practice with a physicality to it. As opposed to, people who might think about it more like a exercise program or routine. And I can connect with what you're saying because, as I've developed my own meditation practice over the years, I think of yoga as being like kind of a meditation practice, but with probably a little more physicality to it.
It really is. That's a very good point. I often say, and this won't make sense to some people, when I'm on my mat practicing and when I'm on the outside of an airplane about to launch myself off and take a jump, those two places for me feel very safe and they feel very familiar because you're not thinking about everything else. There's not a whole lot of times during our day where your mind gets quiet and you're not thinking about multiple things. I'm a multitasker, so I'm constantly thinking of multiple things. I'm doing several things, sometimes to my detriment. But when you're outside of a twin otter and you're about to launch an 8-way with somebody, you're not thinking about other things. You're thinking about making sure you do your job and that you save your life so you can get down on the ground and high five your friends and talk about it. And when I'm doing yoga, it's a beautiful space where you're in a no mind location, and it's very, very comforting, and it's a real blessing. If someone hasn't done yoga, just go onto YouTube and find a 10-minute beginner class and just do it in the quietness of your home. No one has to see it, and just see how you feel when it's over. You'll wonder why you haven't done it before. I promise you.
You talked about the night back in 1994 when you were in that kind of almost sleep state, and you were able to connect with source energy, with the quantum field, with God, whatever we choose to call it, because the brain really is in a relaxed, state of mind, and that connection becomes, when you're in that like very active brain wave patterns where you got a million things thinking, that's not the time to get inspiration from your divine, your soul spirit, from God, whatever we want to, refer to it. I was thinking, like, when you said on the mat or like holding on to the outside of the airplane about the jump, and you're in that, that safe zone. Is that like a similar kind of a place that you're getting to at that point? Do you feel like you're connecting with your soul purpose at that point, or your soul?
Yeah, I think there's just like I said, a no-mindedness that doesn't happen very often. And being on the outside of an aircraft, like I said, there's nothing more you can really think of. And when I need to disconnect and bring my senses inward, especially nowadays, I'm like a lot of people, I'm addicted to my phone. It happened to me a few years ago. There's a lot more stimulus coming in, but if you can roll a mat out, or like yourself, Steve, you said you started a meditation practice, you're entering that same wavelength, that same alpha state. You want to get out of that beta brain, that busyness where you can hear the thoughts in your mind, or maybe you can't even hear the thoughts because you're thinking so loudly, or you can't hear what someone else is saying because your thoughts are too loud. So the practice of yoga, the practice of meditation, for me, it was skydiving. They all brought me the same sense of peace. Now, the skydiving, I have to admit, a little bit more adventurous. I do have a bit of free-spiritedness in me. So not everyone that does yoga needs to jump out of an aircraft.
You've done 2,000 jumps. Are you still actively jumping, or is it kind of tapered off over the years? Or
no, I think about it every day. The only reason I'm not actively jumping is because my gear was grounded. My beloved parachute and my rig that I love, it's over 25 years old. And if someone would allow me to jump, I have it right here in my closet, I would throw it on. It's like putting on an old comfy pair of jeans. I would jump out. I trust it. I trust myself. It's really not smart. It's not safe, but it's completely out of date. And I had a couple of surgeries in the past couple of years on my hips that precluded me. And I swear every day, at least once, I think about going and buying brand new gear, but it's a big ticket item to just jump once in a while. But right now, not active, but who knows what tomorrow brings.
Yeah. Well, it makes sense because we go through different chapters of our life, and 2,000 jumps is that's a pretty good chapter there. And then that's interesting that you said that the rig, the parachute gets to 25 years, and people I guess there's rules and regulations, and they say, hey, this we need to retire this because it's fatigued at that point, or it's
not safe anymore.
Right. So wow. Okay, great. So when did life coaching, which seems like kind of a natural evolution from what you had been, from your yoga practice and your own, spiritual journey, how did you get into, life coaching? What was that? Was there an aha moment, or was there a moment of truth in that regard too? Or did it just sort of naturally evolve without too much resistance?
It was natural, but it was also accidental. It was in 2004. I was still jumping, and I was online, and I saw a Google ad, and it said something about coaching. I clicked on it because my boyfriend at the time was a British nationalist. He was on the British national team, and he was a skydiving coach. And so I thought, oh, I'm going to click on this for him and see what it was about. And I read this article about life coaching, which I had never heard of it. Again, back in 2004, no one had heard of life coaching. And I knew right then, you get that intuitive hit, that little, maybe it's a goosebump, I call them truth bumps, or just a knowingness that, oh my gosh, this is for me. I need to follow through with this. And I made a very important decision. It took me a few weeks because the classes back then, I think the school I went to was around $5,000. That was another pivotal sliding door moment. Becoming a life coach and being trained with IPEC the way I was has completely changed so much in my life. It made me a better listener. It introduced me to clients I would have never met. And I went on to have a sales career in corporate later. And the things that I learned in this coaching class are just invaluable to who I am today as a person, as a friend, as a representative of a company. Even right now, sitting here with you, I wouldn't be who I am today without it. It was phenomenal.
So in your coaching, you said that the two unique things that you like to bring or that you talk about is your intuitiveness or intuitive coaching, and then your deep listening skills. Just what makes, I get what those are, but what makes a good coach, and why do we need to be if we're going to be coaching, why do we need to have some excellent listening skills and that intuitiveness? So
the intuitiveness you're asking about is more innate. It's something that we all have. but you could have more of it if you chose to work with it, for sure. I've always been pretty intuitive. I'm much more intuitive now. And interestingly, the deep listening goes along with it, because you can just hear someone. I can hear you talking right now, or I can really listen. So those are two totally different things. And I learned through this coaching course that there are 3 different levels of listening. And to operate on the 3rd level, which is the deepest level of listening, doesn't happen very often. And always in my coaching sessions, that's what I love about coaching. It takes the ego completely away. It isn't about what I think Steve should do, or, oh, hey, I did this, why don't you try this? There might be a little bit of that, but I'm listening to your higher coach and my higher coach are commingling. And I might say something to you that makes 0 sense to me. I'll say, listen, I'm getting this. I just need to, you need to tell me. And the client will say, oh my God, that makes so much sense. So there is a lot of trust that has to happen for me, because again, your ego takes the back seat. Your client is first, and clients, you know, we all know innately what we need to do to be happier, to be more successful, to create the life of our dreams. But sometimes we don't know the steps to take it. I truly believe that every one of my clients knows exactly what they need to do. It's my job to listen deeply, read between the lines of what they're saying, and to draw that information out of them, that innate intelligence that I am firmly a believer that everyone has.
I did see the part where you talked about on your website the 3 levels of listening. Go ahead and go through them. The first one being subjective, the second one objective, and the third intuitive. So if someone is a subjective listener, level 1, what are they? What kind of listening is that like?
They're just thinking. They're thinking about what it means to them. They can't really hear you. They can hear your words, but they're not listening, and they just can't wait till you're done talking. And sometimes they won't even finish. They won't let you finish. They'll just interject, and they'll just start saying, oh, I did that. Oh yeah, that's something that I relate to. And then you typically sometimes don't go back to what you were talking about. The objective one is when someone is patiently waiting in the sidelines, and they're hearing you, but they can't really hear you because their thoughts are going. They're going over in their mind what they're going to say when you're done. So they're giving you the privilege of speaking your mind, but they're not really hearing you. They're not really listening to what you're saying. They just can't wait to tell their story. The 3rd level is so powerful. And this is what I'm so eternally grateful for, because I wasn't this kind of a listener before 2004. I was level 1 and 2, and I still am sometimes. So I'm not going to sit here and pretend like I'm always at level 3 and I never do level 1 subjective listening. That's just not true. But I do operate on the 3rd level much more deeply. And when I do connect with someone that way, it enriches your relationships. I encourage everyone to try to listen from that intuitive space, to really be present with the person that's speaking to you. Because in this day and age, Steve, not many people get to have an audience that really hears. You know when someone heard what you said and cares about it. They acknowledge back what you said, and you say, wow, geez, she was really listening to what I just said. And then if you can read between a line and help that person learn something about themselves, it's just a great way to connect with people.
I often say that listening deeply, and what you're calling intuitive listening, it's very intimate. You know, we mix up the idea of what intimacy means in relationships, and obviously there's a physical intimacy that couples would share with each other, but you can share intimacy with anybody if you actually just connect with them. And I feel very fortunate. From my Gump years, I had to learn to be that kind of a listener, because people were coming, and the character just gave people permission to open up and share. And if I wasn't respecting or acknowledging or feeding that back to them, I was missing out on that great opportunity, because they wanted to give me this gift of sharing, and I had to learn how to receive it. And listening more than just like, there would be times when I would be performing and I was then strictly in the first level of subjective. I was like, just like picking up something that they said and like launching into the next thing. And then there was like, just sitting there allowing them to do it. But I really was, like I was still kind of stuck in my own thoughts, but that third level became what I would call intimate. And I loved it. And it's fun.
That is such a great way to interpret that, Steve. I love that. It is a very intimate experience. And you're right. I think that intimacy is more profound when it's not physical sometimes. And just having a one-on-one contact where someone is holding space for you, they know you're really listening to them and hearing them. You're acknowledging it back, which shows that you care. And in this day and age, there are people who have been married for 30 years and they don't get that kind of intimacy from their spouses. So for me, to have that intimacy with friends, colleagues, even strangers on a plane. It's happened to me many times.
Yep.
It's a gift that I don't know that I would have picked up on my own without the training that I had and the practice. And like I said, I can do better, but I love having that tool in my toolbox. And I recommend everyone try it. At least try the second level for a little bit. It's like a muscle, right? You got to build up your muscle. You have to practice it.
Exactly. Yeah. So we're getting down to the end. Oh gosh, I didn't change the banner. And let me do this right now while I'm thinking of it. So this is Tara Crete. We know who she is, but she is a yoga teacher, a speaker, a life coach, and her website is innergood.com. When people go to your website, what are they going to find? They're going to learn more. I know, because I was just there, and so I learned a lot about you. But tell people, give people an idea of what they can expect when they go visit you there.
They'll probably learn a little bit more about me than they need to know, but it's more of a bio, and it shares a little bit about the things we talked about today, the life coaching, my time in Peru, and I need to update that website. And it's more like a digital resume. Coming up, I'm going to be starting a podcast myself, a video podcast. It's called Sacred Valley. So all of that will be under the umbrella of Inner Good. So stay tuned for that. I'm really excited about that.
Do you want to share I know your Sacred Valley, it picks up and takes like what you learned in Peru. And so just sort of give us it's still in development phase, but give us the idea, what's the high level, hey, what's the highest you've ever jumped from a parachute? 1,400 feet, 14,000 feet?
No, 22,000 when I was doing.
Okay, give us the 22,000 foot view of what Sacred Valley is going to be like, and what are you envisioning?
That's a great metaphor. So Sacred Valley isn't a literal place. It's where I lived part of the time when I spent my time in Peru. It's a beautiful valley in the Andes Mountains of Peru. It's stunning. You should pull up a picture of it. You'll be blown away. But it's also someplace very special within. I think every one of us has a sacred valley. So I want my show to be a lot, you're right. You and I have a lot in common. I am going to be sharing my personal story of my experiences in Peru, because I've been wanting to write a book for 20 years. And I thought, finally, I think I'll just do it chapter by chapter in digital form. I'll do it on video, and I'll start in the beginning and share some experiences along my path. But then I would also like to bring all kinds of spiritual people on, people that have something to share, ordinary people, like you said, who do have extraordinary stories to tell, people who want to share what their sacred valley is.
When did you first go to Peru, and what was the backstory of how that came to be?
That was in 1998, after I had moved to the drop zone. I was living in a trailer and was living my best life. And I had some friends who inspired me to come along with them in October of 99, I think. And that's another one of those sliding door pivotal moments for sure. I wouldn't be who I am today without Peru as well. So I'll be sharing a lot of experiences about that. For 20 years, it's my life. You have an amazing story, but you might have been thinking this whole time, well, this is just what I do. I work at Bubble Gump Shrimp and this is it. But other people find it fascinating. And I've had so many people ask me to share my story, and I never did. And I don't know why, but I think now I'm finally ready. Why not?
One of the things you can certainly do is, in having a podcast, is you can develop the stories and, share them with other people. And the act of showing up on a regular basis and putting yourself out there forces you to come up with new ideas and new content. And my monologues developed out of that same thing where I'll just back up and say, when I started the show 11 months ago, my monologues were all about the safe things that I had been talking about for, 20 years. And then somewhere along the line, not like only a couple months into it, they evolved into like, well, what is my guest going to talk about? And how can I get some inspiration from that? So anyway, all this, like this whole moments of truth, I never quite defined that in the way that I did today, just because you're forced to go on the air and do it. So anyway, I encourage you to go for it, and I'm going to cheering you on, and we'll bring you back, and we'll do this again, but we won't play the first time guest.
And you can have your case of beer. Thank you. You're an inspiration to me, Steve. I do appreciate you having me on today.
Yeah. So we had Judy checking in with us this morning, and she acknowledged and said good morning. So thank you, Judy, for that for joining us today. So when do you expect the broadcast to begin? What's your
Well, it's going to be soon. I'm doing my first practice today.
Okay.
With Becky Gregory, the girl who had me on their show the other day, and who knows, maybe you'll let me interview you at some point. I'm just winging it. I'm probably doing this backwards. I'm doing this like I jump out of an airplane. If you just bring me over, I'll just say, let me out here. I'll make my way back. Where I really shouldn't do it that way, but that's just how I live my life. I'm kind of working backwards. I'm just jumping in with both feet, and then I'll work my way backwards until I get to a nice sweet spot. Hopefully, that's my plan.
Wow. I like the metaphor of the road less traveled. And I always thought about my own life and, the fact that for 15 years, I had this kind of crazy job where I just sat on the bench and talked to people pretending to be another character. And yet it felt like it was what I was supposed to be doing. And so I appreciate that you are doing that same very thing. And so we're kind of soul spirits in the sense that we're, the cookie cutter of life just didn't seem to work for either of us.
This didn't seem to work. So what are you going to do? Right. You gotta make your own cookie.
That's right. Right. All righty. Well, thanks. Hey, thanks for joining us. We'll have to, I would definitely love to go have you back again, because there's a couple things. You've done a Dr. Joe Dispenza retreat. Yes.
Indeed. Yes.
Just one time, or
just the one time? Yeah, a couple of years
ago. Was it a multi-day event?
8 days of deep meditation.
Oh my gosh. So we have to, I want to, so there's more to talk about. So we'll have to find a time, and we'll bring you back. So thank you so much. Have a great rest of your day.
You.
All right.
Have a great day.
All right. So Tara Crete, thank you for joining us this morning. That was a lot of fun. That was a good overview of it. And I felt like with many people who have joined the show, sometimes people kind of come in and they just do a one-time guest and they tell their story. And then other times people, have like areas that you can go into. So the whole Peru thing, I would love to explore deeper, and some of the other people that she's trained with and studied with, because they're people that I admire and have been reading and studying with in the spirit of their work and their body of work. So we'll see if we can't get Tyra to come back and join us again. All righty, well, that's it. It's the show's coming to an end. Let's see here. Tomorrow I'm going to probably just do some kind of a monologue show. I'm not 100% sure, but I plan to be here. On Sunday, I'm going to be a guest on Della's Voice Sunday live talk show. I'll put the link on my Facebook page and on American Gumption page. So that's Sunday, July 4th at 12 noon Eastern time. And then Tuesday, Serenity Sam comes back, and she's going to talk about how putting paint onto oil, putting oil onto a canvas has made her more creative. She's a musician. And so she's going to talk about connecting the whole artistic mindset and how one art enhances the other. And then on Wednesday, Peter Panagori, and I'm not sure how to say it, but we'll find out. Peter Panagori will say he is the author of Heaven is Beautiful, and it's his near-death experience that he had on the side of an icy mountain, back in 1980 something, 80 something. So we'll leave it at that. All right. Have a great rest of your day. I'll see you tomorrow.